second. But today we are going to talk about 5 things that COVID has changed. How we're going to limit it to only 5 is a great feat. But let's talk about 5 things that COVID has changed, Reverend Cassandra.
The first thing that COVID has changed, of course, is social distancing. It is undeniable that the coronavirus disease has taken the world by surprise. Governments radically forced guidelines that, in a matter of days, shut down businesses indefinitely, and people found themselves compelled to abide by the new norms to society. Social distancing presents the dangers and an increasing of social rejection, growing impersonality and individualism, and the loss of a sense of community. It negatively affects learning and growth, and it prevents people from effectively socializing, which is a fundamental human need. At the same time, social distancing keeps us safe from this very pandemic, this very deadly pandemic.
You know what? I think I agree with you 100%. Like, there are good and bad sides to social distancing. First of all, because there's social distancing where you have to maintain 6 feet, where you're not hugging and all that kind of thing. And then there's social distancing where you're just not in touch with your family. You're not visiting. And so personally, I've had COVID twice. And I remember the first time that I had COVID, I was actually around my sister all the time, but we practiced social distancing in that we stayed 6 feet away, we wore a mask, and she did not get it because of that. I also actually like social distancing because, particularly in church environments and stuff like that, when people always want to hug you, and I don't want to hug everybody, and this has given me the perfect reason not to have to hug.
Listen, I feel you on the last part. I get along well with people. I can navigate a crowd setting, but I am definitely the kind of person who needs to be like, respect my bubble, and so I really like this idea of this duality of social distancing. On the one hand, it provides us with the safety that we need in the midst of a pandemic, but at the same time, I will say, you know what though, social distancing has made meeting people awkward. So for example, I don't know, like, are we bumping elbows? Do we bump fists? Are we supposed to, like, I don't know, do we air hug? I think it's made things very, very awkward. And so we don't yet have the standard etiquette for what is appropriate right now, other than stay away from each other. And so as an adult, that's kind of where I am. But when I think about kids, like especially kids that are young in this pandemic, the social distancing probably has exponentially horrifying effects on their socialization, their personal development, because that interpersonal connection and interaction is essential for growth.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Having a younger child at home, the early days of the pandemic were really, really rough for us because Judah was at home by himself. And then he had his cousins who had each other, and he was by himself. So initially it was very, very, very tough for him, not having that social interaction. And it puts a lot of pressure on me because, I'm the entertainment. So I think that, and when he did go back to school, there was a lot of things that we had to navigate because he wasn't the only one. You have a class full of kids that had been home by themselves or with little social interaction. And, we had some fallout. But I will say, when you talk about the social norms, I think about my mother and my mother-in-law who live in the same building. They live in a senior building. And my mother-in-law is, pandemic or not, she wants to hug her kids. She wants to hug her grandkids. And my mother is like, oh, no, don't you hug me. So they're out together. And my mother-in-law is like, oh, give me a hug. And my mother's like, you can't be hugging all on people. So it was just funny to watch a different response.
Take us away with the next one.
Number 2. Another side effect of the pandemic has been increased alcohol consumption. A study found that alcohol consumption in the United States rose 14% during pandemic shutdowns. Women in particular reported worrying increases in heavy drinking during the spring of 2020, according to the study. In addition, to a range of negative physical health associations, excessive alcohol use may lead to or worsen existing mental health problems. This is what this study found. And I find that very interesting because, believe me, wine has become a good friend of mine during the pandemic, particularly early on when you're just kind of stuck in the house and, you get a glass of wine to help you kind of mellow out, help you kind of cope. But I have heard a lot of people be worried about how much they have been consuming. And I think now we have experienced what they're calling dry January as a response to all of this over drinking that people have been doing. And I also think that a lot of it probably has to do with people being confined to their homes. So like, whereas you're going out and you might have one or two drinks and you have to drive home. If you're in the house and you're having a drink, you don't have to drive anywhere. So what's to stop you?
That's a really good point. So first of all, my drinking did not make this study because I totally didn't drink. I don't really remember. You know what? That's not true. In the summertime, I had my little frozen, the frozen ones you get from Walmart, the little sweet things that really, yeah. My little daiquiris. So I did have that. But my wine consumption, like I had bottles of wine from a winery that I went to right before the pandemic. And they're actually, I still, I haven't used them. So my wine intake has gone down, but I didn't think about the fact that driving somewhere was kind of the gauge that people were using based on, okay, well, I've had enough because I need to get to where I'm going. But right, exactly. Oh my gosh. But then, also when you talk about the stress and being able to cope with being home, I mean, think about it. For people whose lives before were so busy that they couldn't even sit down to a meal with their family, are now 24/7 with their family. Kids are now at work, part of their work day, and the kids' work day is part of their lives, or their spouse is in their face, and they had reached a happy medium of only seeing each other, first thing in the morning and right before we go to bed. And so now it's like all together the whole time.
Right. And two, as a parent of a smaller child, navigating the technology in the school, trying to do my work and trying to make sure, he's on the computer, he's in the right Zoom link, he's in the right Google Classroom. I felt like my day was constantly interrupted. And then you kind of get to the end of the day and you're just like so stressed out. You have a drink or something to help relax you. And I do think that, I think that it's good that more people are becoming aware of that. And we are seeing things like dry January, because when you're already living in such a stressful time period, I can see how excessive alcohol use can add to the negativity, weight gain, and then just if you're suffering from depression, adding the alcohol in it can definitely make things worse.
Now, I don't want to belabor this because we've definitely been on this point for long, but I do have to point out, now that we're talking about this, during the pandemic, I was driving for Uber Lyft, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is all new, but it's not really, because a large amount of drives that I took, especially when we were in lockdown, were people literally going to the liquor store. And they were going to the liquor store first thing in the morning, late at night, middle of the day, multiple times. I would get the same person, because we're in the same vicinity, multiple times a day going back to the liquor store. So yeah, this very true. Wow. Very, very true.
Interesting.
Number, where are we? Number three? Okay, yeah. 3, dressing up. According to a 2020 NBC article, in quarantine, the self-expression of clothing had been somewhat lost in the monotony of sweatpants and t-shirts. Without being able to go out, no one to impress, and no reason to get dressed up fully, people who view clothing as a form of their personal identity have struggled with the reality of quarantine. Researchers from Cornell did a short study of fashion trends and COVID impact. The results included, but also moved beyond, the loosening of business and business casual standards, and looked at the impact of travel bans, the transport of essential materials and products, as well as the resulting increase in price, and the effects of limited access for mass consumption.
Yeah.
So I didn't the funny thing is when I thought about fashion, I was like, my whole fashion wardrobe has gone to the gutter. I literally was dwelling in heaven because I love sweats, I love leggings, I love my Converse. I was in heaven. But now in 2022, I'm pushing myself. I said I'm gonna do my hair every day, which sounds ridiculous because we should be doing our hair every day anyway. But COVID, baby, COVID. So I'm like, I'm gonna get dolled up in some way every single day to rebuild this muscle, but I don't think I'll ever return to heels.
Oh, okay. Well, we will get to heels. So I agree with you, right? So my uniform during COVID has been a long sleeve black t-shirt and black leggings. Now, here's the thing. I do have some clients who still want to meet in person. And I'm like, I'll meet with certain people because they really want to meet with them. And, we go back to that etiquette of social distancing. I always wear my mask when people are around just because I always do. Well, I said my uniform is a long sleeve black t-shirt and black leggings. When I have a client meeting, in order to dress it up, I put on a long cardigan. Then I'm like, a long black cardigan to dress it up. So, you can't tell exactly what I have on. And I was like, one day I was like, you were doing too, not too much. You're doing too little. Like, do something a little bit better, So now it's gotten to the point where if I do dress up, everybody in my family's like, where are you going? What you got to do? Like, why are you so dressed up? And I was like, that is not good. That is not good. Now, to your point about heels, girl,
yes.
I can't even halfway walk in heels anymore. I went out one time with heels and I was like, yeah, I have got to get these things off of my feet. Like ASAP.
I know. I was like, I tried to be cute. I was like, oh, this is not going to work. I don't know how I was able to do this before.
Especially with you, because you would wear some heels and just because it was Tuesday. You know what I'm saying?
Heels and jeans or something. Yeah, I'm out of practice. Plus, I'm like, you know what, girl, I got the COVID pounds, so the pandemic pounds. So I'm stacking heavy on these heels now. But I just, the other thing that you were talking about is like the cardigan that you throw on. So I have a million of these like different kind of turtleneck sweaters that I just rotate out, and I made sure that I had like 8 or 9 of them so that I could wear one every day and then maybe not repeat it right away.
Right.
Yeah, I'm totally with you.
Right. What the good side is? We got our closet redone. And I was going through my clothes and I just started getting rid of stuff. So now I feel like I don't have any clothes since I got rid of so much stuff. But I was like, I had so much stuff that I wasn't really ever using anyway. I found out I'd wear the same, 5 things that I like the most anyway. So I just use it as an opportunity to get rid of so much stuff. Now, the flip side is that, like for Christmas, my husband bought me a pair of fancy high-heeled boots, and those things are just sitting on the shelf like for decoration. I'm assuming he wants me to wear them, and I think it's a hint, but I gotta pray on
it. Listen, you can wear them from inside or like right at the door till you step inside and take them right off.
Right. Man.
Oh my gosh.
Man. Okay, what's number four? A distorted sense of time. Being confined and working and attending school from home can make the days feel much longer. A study done in England showed that many people reported experiencing a distorted sense of time during the country's lockdown. For people who work from home during the pandemic, that disorienting effect is compounded by the collapse of the boundary between work and home. And now you have a much more fluid work day. I think the same probably applies for school. So it makes us ask, when does the day begin and end? And when can you ever really leave this virtual pandemic? And I have to say that has been something that I still feel. I was reading an article about, I think I told you about this the other day, Reverend Cassandra, about health and like weight, and how as you get older, it's more difficult to lose a pounds. And the article said, what we have to remember is that we've aged 2 years during this pandemic. And I'm like, man, it has been 2 years and it does not feel like it at all. But, time has moved on. But I feel like I've been in this sort of time warp for these past 2 years.
I think the reality check is especially when I see like little kids and I see how much they've grown, and I'm just like, when did that happen? Like normally you're like that, but I think it is compounded because of the pandemic. I'm like, wow, because in my mind, I'm expecting time to have stood still and been quarantined with us, but it literally has not. And so I even find myself, thinking about days, thinking about hours differently, and I can't grasp time in the same way. And it doesn't mean the same thing. And in fact, I have embraced the slowing down of time in that I have lost a sense of urgency for some things, which may or may not be a good thing, but it's because the pandemic has required me to even slow down without recognizing that I'm slowing down.
Yeah. It's interesting what you say about the kids, because I was looking at pictures last night and, I was just going back. And at the beginning of the pandemic, Judah didn't have his two front teeth. And then like halfway in the middle of the pandemic, he just had two front teeth with no teeth on the side. So his teeth look really, really big. And now he has all those teeth in. And I'm like, man, when did all these teeth come in? But it's been 2 years.
It's been 2 years. Jabari was talking to me about, the fact that he's a senior now. For those of you all who are watching this, live, that Jabari was hosting the kids table way back when, and his sweet little voice does not sound like this grown man who is here now. But he was talking to me about how his high school career is like, there was freshman year and then sophomore semester, and then it's like graduation.
Yeah.
And he was like, because 2 of those years were spent at home going to school.
Absolutely. And it's bittersweet, because I have to say, particularly in the beginning, I really did enjoy having that much time just with my family and being able to not feel like I was missing hours and hours out of the kids' lives. But, they did miss a lot. Like my nephew is a senior like Jabari is, and prom was weird, and they didn't get to have the same experience. And I'm always reflective when I think about particularly the really small kids like my son, my niece, and my nephew, who, Judah started the pandemic in kindergarten, didn't finish kindergarten, goes back in second grade. And just, that sense of time for them is much, much longer than it is for us. So it's like they've spent a large percentage of their lives in a pandemic and quarantine. And I wonder what the long-term impact is going to be for them.
I am guessing that they're going to hoard hand sanitizer, toilet tissue, and Clorox. They're going to grow up and be the people who hoard those items, thinking that at any moment we'll be in lockdown, because this is what happened. I think about the baby boomers and how so many of them are hoarders because of being born in wartime. And really thinking about, this isn't necessarily, wartime in a different way. But, the pandemic's effects long-term on young people.
But, I don't want to belabor this too much, but, we also talked about this with fashion. I think sometimes we miss some of the impacts of this pandemic. For example, I got a deck put on my house and added a back door, to make it easier for the kids to get in and outside of the to the backyard, during the pandemic, even though they just want to stay in the house and play PS5 and iPads or whatever. But the guys who were doing the work for me, they had a very hard time finding the wood, and we had to end up changing the plans because they just couldn't get those supplies. And now I was already a big Instacart user, but now I'm always frustrated because there's things that I want and they're like, we don't have it in stock. And when the shopper sends me the pictures of the shelves sometimes look kind of like wartime-ish, where we just do not have the same choice that we had. And the flip side is that I didn't realize it, but I was like, am I paying more for groceries? And then my sister was saying how much the food has gone up. So, we don't always notice that we are kind of in like a wartime experience.
Oh yeah. Especially with going into the stores and seeing it empty, like especially right now where, you're used to getting regular things, oranges, apples, bananas, and you go into the grocery store and there's like None. I'm like, what is happening? Or, maybe a few weeks ago, I went to the store, all the bread was gone. And I was like, what do I need to know? I need to turn on the news. I'm like, are we doing this again? So,
Yeah, it is humbling in a sense because, we're so used to getting whatever we want. Well, we were so used to getting whatever we want in season, out of season, like small first world problem. I was ordering grapes and I was so frustrated. I was like, they better have grapes in stock when I order my grapes. And I missed the little Instacart chat, but she was like, they have cotton candy grapes and red grapes. They didn't have the green grapes. And I missed it. I was like, darn it, she should have gotten the cotton candy grapes. But I would have never thought I lived in a time where there were not just white grapes in the grocery store for my taking. So
definitely first world problems. Definitely.
In a sense, but I'm trying to make my children eat fruit. So, and like the fruit we'll eat is grapes. So, otherwise it's Doritos.
I totally get you. I get you. So number 5, public coughing. There is no doubt that coughing in public is dangerous. It has been known to spread colds and germs to innocent bystanders, but COVID has taken coughing in public to a completely new level. It is not uncommon to be glared at, harassed, threatened, and publicly called out for coughing in public. Is this excessive? Are people going too far? I consider the bus driver in Detroit's response in 2020. I'll play just a little bit of that clip to prompt our discussion.
This bus driver wanted to tell the nation something important.
I feel violated.
He posted this video after a female passenger boarded his bus in Detroit and coughed.
For you to get on the bus and stand on the bus and cough several times without covering up your mouth, and you know that we in the middle of a pandemic, that lets me know that some folks don't care.
4 days after he made the video, Jason Hargrove tested positive for coronavirus. He died on April 1st.
Oh, man.
I think about that video. I think about his response. I think about even the thread when it was going viral on social media about, coughing in public, and people were like, don't cough in public, wear a mask, do all these things. And we're still saying to people, wear a mask, cover your mouth, protect everybody around. And this is one extreme story, but literally we're in a pandemic that's killing people. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like torn, but I'm not, because this is life or death, cover your mouth, do the right thing. Save a life. And also, though, the glares, like there was a time where we could at least cough in public, but now it's just like, fear. We're afraid.
Right. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. Number one is it was always impolite to cough without covering your mouth, right? I think that now, for me, I feel like a lot of practices that we've incorporated as a result of COVID should have been practices that we had incorporated anyway. Like, honestly, the Asians have been people from Asian countries have been wearing masks in public for long periods of time. I think that if you're sick, you should wear a mask. I talked about my mom earlier and how she's like, oh, don't hug me. But it's very real for her. Both my mother and my mother-in-law are breast cancer survivors. And they both had radiation. And my mom would get pneumonia every single year post her surgery and post her radiation. So it's very scary for her because she has asthma. So on one hand, it's extreme when she's like, don't hug me. But on the other hand, there's very real consequences or potential consequences. The other thing I'll add is that I just read an op-ed by a woman who was chronically ill. And she said that she felt very upset about the way that people discuss COVID and saying that it's only people who are chronically ill or who have certain comorbidities who are at risk of dying. So it made her feel devalued, that it didn't matter. And that, it was really kind of insulting that people didn't want the inconvenience of wearing a mask or common courtesy of covering their mouths because it's only people who are chronically ill or who have some other comorbidity who are likely to die. And so I think that it is something that we need to think about it a great deal. I know now if I cough, I'm like, oh no, I don't want to cough in public because people are looking at you like, what's wrong with you? But, you know, there's a real threat. There's a real threat to the cough.
You know, I've had passengers come in the car and be like, I'm vaccinated. I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm like, wait a minute. Just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that you're invincible or that nobody else is going to ride in the vehicle. You know, you could be spreading something. I've had people get in the car with no mask and then cough. You know, and then in the beginning of the pandemic, I had a lot of young people get in the car and they had that, like, I forgot what the challenge was, but get into a public space and just cough, you know, I'm just like, what the heck? Yeah, we're not going to do that. So yeah, it's crazy out there. It's crazy out there. And so my encouragement for people watching this, put on a mask. Please put on a mask. I don't care if you got vaccinated. I don't care if you got boosted. I don't care. Put on a mask.
Right. And that's what I say. I a lot of times I wear it just for other people's protection. Like, you know, I had COVID, I've been vaccinated, boosted, and I had Omicron as well. So I feel like my immune system is strong, but I don't want to endanger anyone else because I'm not likely, clearly I'm not likely to die or get very sick. And frankly, I'm a person who has random allergies. So like dust will kick up and I'll have a sneezing fit. And I promise you, I've been very happy in times that I've had my mask on because my sneeze comes out and it's like, this guy I used to work with said I sneeze like a pterodactyl and a big sneeze is coming out and I'm covering my face. But I'm like, thank God I have my mask on because I don't want people having to deal with the fallout of my sneeze.
And for the record, let me just point out, a cough, the projectiles that come out of a cough can travel farther than 6 feet.
Yes,
and the projectiles that come out from a sneeze can travel more than 25 feet. Yeah. So please put on a mask. The other thing I want to say, just as a clergy person, for those of you all who are followers of the faith, please note that this is the prime opportunity for us to live in a way that embodies what it means to love your neighbor as you love yourself by wearing your mask and protecting other people and protecting yourself.
Absolutely, because I do think that it's such a sign of selflessness to always wear your mask and be considerate of other people's sensitivity. You know, it's not that bad. I mean, it can be a pain in the neck, but it's really not that bad. And again, like I said, honestly, I feel like certain times, like people who are working in food service, like should wear masks forever, honestly. And I'm like, why weren't we doing this before? We have people wearing hairnets. Like, why didn't we have people wearing masks when they're all over top of your food and like bringing your food to the table? It's like, what sense did that make? So I hope we keep that practice in place.
Let it be like the seatbelt. There was a time when we didn't use seatbelts like this, but we've learned, So that'd be dope.
I think that COVID has had a whole lot of changes and impact on our lives. This was just 5 ways that COVID has changed our lives, and I'd be happy to hear other people. If you guys want to hit us on Facebook, let us know. Share in the conversation about things that we may have missed or things that you wanted to add. We definitely encourage that conversation.
This has been awesome and a half. We are glad to be back and engaging from you and hearing from you. And I can't wait for us to be doing this on the regular. So stay tuned. Whenever we go live, you will get your notifications as long as you click and make that setting yours. So as soon as we go live, you'll be the first ones to know.
One more thing. Talk about time distortion. Can you believe it's been almost 5 years since we originally started this? That's crazy to me.
That is crazy. That is very crazy. We are excited to be with you again, engaging in great conversations. So make sure that you like our page, share our posts, and get involved in the conversation. We have a new segment coming out called What's Cooking in the Kitchen, and you get to voice your voice and your opinions live on our show. So we love to engage you then.
Coming up next on The Table Live.
It's our first official full episode, and we are talking about love in lockdown. Tune in as we talk about life, faith,
love,
culture,
and politics through a faith lens. From experts
to everyday people,
the young
and the old,
from every walk of life, all are welcome. So pull up a chair and join us at the table live,
where we're always honest,
always real, and always relevant.
Check us out online at www.thetablelive.com
or on social media using the handles @TheTableLive.
The Table Live is a subsidiary of Two Strand Productions, LLC.